Hello. I've never read the book, but I know the author, Colin Wilson. The book was The Outsider, his famous book. And I know that he came up with, I'm not sure if it was in that book or a different book, maybe the book was called The Robot. The idea of the robot, which was like the subconscious, the part of you that learns away from your conscious participation. It seems to learn beside you or even outside of you, and when you come back to do something that you've been struggling at, you find that there is an increase in skill level, or indeed after a period of time you're able to do the task without thinking, a bit like driving. Like you don't have to think after a few, after you've passed your test and you start driving around for a bit. You don't really have to think too much about what gear you need or what foot to press down. It's all automatic. And you see, exploring meditation to quite an extreme degree. Now, I guess there are things that you want to be automatic. When you incorporate a ritual into your practice, beginning, ending, and getting into a certain mood, you do want to provide triggers to facilitate an automatic sense of seriousness and to create the right mood and atmosphere for what you're doing. But the focus is on being conscious most of the time, to be aware and to bring that awareness into daily life. Because as my teacher expresses, whatever you do in meditation, or rather you bring the fruits of your meditation into daily life. And this is true. Just simply sitting up straighter and maintaining peace in silent awareness, these kinds of things, it does change your personality, and this affects the way that people react towards you, but not solidly in all situations. There are going to be certain habits, again, that catch you out, and sometimes you're going to feel quite justified about that. It's tricky. Anyway, thinking about this kind of automatic versus conscious approach, and the training of the mind, and the mind alongside the mind, the subconscious, the higher self perhaps, there's a really strong similarity to playing guitar. And I played guitar for years. I don't play guitar anymore because I can't, and it's quite lucky that I don't want to, because I can't. Something to do with window cleaning out in the cold, mixed with the fact that I was playing extremely demanding metal, which was like mostly thrash and death metal, strong industrial and very, very strong classic metal vibe going on. But a lot of it was that thrash, death metal, those very demanding. To get from one end of a song to another, it was a physical feat. And guitar playing is a physical thing, but anyone who knows this form of music will understand this is this is different levels. So guitar practice used to be a little bit like, or rather my guitar practice or rather my sorry, it's getting late. My meditation practice is a little bit like my guitar practice, in terms of making small incremental steps and keeping this discipline through paperwork and instruments and various paraphernalia, and taking it seriously, of course, and recognizing those breakthroughs. So when you're playing guitar, you might increase the metronome by 5 BPM, beats per minute, you know, the tick tock tick tock, every couple of days or so. To increase the speed, you have to start off slow, like any musical instrument. You have to start off slow, and gradually you advance. And I had 2 stages of learning to play guitar, one in my teens and one in my late 20s. So I kind of started again twice. And in my late 20s, I was able to afford a decent guitar, or 2 or 3, I think I had at one point. And I could afford lessons. I'm so glad that I wrote my first batch of songs before I had lessons, because there's something about the punk ethic, especially when you're using kind of cheap and now ancient recording equipment. It's wonderful to have been able to lay down music, on tape, and then a digital recorder that's just like a box, a big black box, and then moving on to PC. To have that historical span is really cool. There's many great things about being born between the the eras of analog and digital. To have experienced both is kind of cool. So the second time that I began playing guitar, or rather learning guitar, again from a kind of beginning point, I was practicing scales, and I was increasing the metronome gradually, and every now and then you'll realize that you've broken through into a new skill level. And it's not I don't want to compare this directly with meditation and talk about breakthroughs in meditation, but what I want to focus on is the idea of something that lives and grows alongside one's self as an aspect of the mind, or the subconscious, or you could bring in the idea of the higher self as well. I'm sure there are many layers going on, even in with the music as well, because if you're a creative songwriter, then you will have experience of the muse. Sometimes an idea will just come into your head, and because you're living that, this was a passion for me. This was my greatest passion for years, and in my mind I was quite determined that would be, I was hoping that would become a career at some point, but I kind of really just wanted to make the music that I wanted to make in my teens, and I was satisfied at that, at least. So I did that, and it's great. It's wonderful to have that evidenced online for posterity. Job done. It's a good feeling. You see, I don't want to put down anyone who's wants to be a musician now, although it's a lot, of course, it's a lot harder, of course it is. And being born, experiencing this between, or rather in both of those different situations of the age before the internet and after. So you had this hope in the back of your mind that you would be able to sell CDs, lots of them, one day. And as soon as the internet, that whole business with music come along, it was a game changer, a complete and utter game changer. I could talk too much on this subject, to be honest with you, but let's stick to the point. And the point being is that When you apply yourself to a skill and you feel passionate about it, then you have the first stage of the IAO, which I know Crowley mentions in his Magic and Theory and Practice, but it's come up within the community that I belong to in the instructions from our teacher, etc., etc. IAO, Isis, Apophis, Osiris. So when you have that passion and you apply yourself and you have a goal. Now with guitar playing, that would be, and music, knowing that other people, I mean, you listen to an album, if someone else can do it, I can do it. I can get to that level. I can write that kind of song, or I can do that particular type of technique. I could sing like that. So having something to aim for and wanting to emulate your heroes whilst at the same time, doing something unique in your own way. It's the same thing. It's very, very helpful to have the influence of someone who has demonstrated ability and literally exudes a kind of, from your point of view, an undeniable proof that what you're aiming for is achievable. And also, being part of a community is also very helpful when it comes to having the fire to get through that initial stage. I'll explain these stages in a moment more deeply, and it will make sense. How this relates to being in a band is that you don't want to let your bandmates down. Like, if we're learning a song, we're learning a song. If you're playing live, you don't want to mess up. There's a reason to pull your weight and to keep getting better, and it's not all just about you. You enjoy the communal side of things, although you spend most of your time in the evening playing guitar on your own. Same thing with meditation. You spend most of that time on your own, in your own mind. But being a part of a group adds that aspect, which is very healthy and valuable. And as I was saying, having the instruction of someone that you trust, that you can see has got to where you desire to be, again, in your own original way, of course, because we're all different, but there are certain things that are solid, that are it's not about you, it's about the skill, or the mindset. So this IAO is the Isis, Apophis, Osiris. In anything that takes daily or nightly practice, and it's very, very important to keep up the practice, because you can't just play guitar for a few days. I'll come back to that a few days later, and then take a week. No, it don't work. You got to have the passion. You got to be on it every day, making small incremental steps. Same thing with meditation. So what happens after the Isis phase is the Apophis stage. These are Egyptian gods. I should have said that in the beginning. Isis, Apophis, Osiris. Everyone knows Isis. Everyone knows Osiris. Apophis can be swapped out for Set, which is a kind of difficult and abrasive figure. So this represents hard work, and the moment where you realize, like, even though you're really excited about this, it's going to be difficult and it's probably going to go on for a little while, and you need to have enough excitement or enough ambition that when the fires of excitement do burn out and you're only left with the ambition, it will carry you through this difficult and challenging part of the training. But when you succeed eventually, against sometimes even boredom and repetition, this is kind of difficult as well, because it should be joyful, but we know that that's not always the case. That's life. Sometimes it's going to be challenging, and there's many distractions in life, many that I don't have, some that I sometimes wish that I did have, some that I avoid. most of the time. So when you break through to the Osiris stage, this is the rebirth, this is the flourishing, you know, the idea of the fruits of the harvest, the resurrection. So there are many micro EO. Does that ring a bell anywhere? I will definitely talk about that in a later video. Yeah. There are many micro versions of this process going on, and then there's a macro version, which is the encapsulated path, the passion, the thing that you're trying to do. So I've found that my struggle to become a professional level guitar player, songwriter, singer, which I did, and unfortunately I arrived in a world that was where it was no longer workable. At the same time I was getting older. Well, I say older, I mean, you know, like late 30s, and I was like, you know, I don't really want to live that lifestyle. Pubs and clubs and people sort of, you know, a lot of, no disrespect, but a lot of people, a lot of younger people as well, you know, like teenagers and that, and it's just, I just thought, sod this, you know, and went through a kind of period of almost aimlessness, but not so, because I would always find something constructive, whether it was reading or whatever, modelling, not, you know, like modelling, I mean like making models, you know, don't, obviously. So when I found this new, now this is a life, this is the passion, this is life and beyond, this is the ultimate. There is nothing more difficult than this, which is part of the appeal, and it is, consciousness is, as I stated in the last video, if it's the ontological primitive, then it is the main event. So, and it also has its own world of colourful trappings and books and characters. It's and I was always into this subject, and I mean, I began actually around about 2014, and a lot of the songs that I wrote were based around these kinds of subjects. But, you know, as fate would have it, although they bled into each other, there was also a kind of dividing line and a kind of set period. They sometimes describe Set as the god of the desert. So there was a kind of, you know, a difficult period. Of transition, until I found that these skills, as a musician, someone who had succeeded in proving myself as a musician, these skills were completely transferable. And you know, if there was a meta skill that was being learned that was transferable, it was the application of discipline and the knowledge that there is a part of the mind that, you know, that learns alongside the conscious self, and every now and then just kicks into action, and there's a breakthrough, and there's a, you know, a new skill level is achieved. And of course that is always between, you know, that is always like, you know, for the most, in almost every situation, you know, it's not something you want to there's ways of, you know, handling that appropriately, I guess, but sticking to the idea more specifically of the meditation, transferable skills in a very direct way. And sometimes it's odd, like life makes sense in reverse. The tragedy of losing music whilst at the same time kind of feeling disheartened, and then, you know, everything that I learned, it felt like it was, almost felt like it was I wouldn't say a waste of time, because I'm very proud of all of it. But it felt like it was something that was just done, and it didn't have any resonance. So now, for me, there is a resonance and a continuation, and that's a good thing. Okay, thanks for listening. Good night.